Hey, look which one I got. Look what I got. Here, Elizabeth, go choose a pretty color that you like.
Yeah, so I'd like to call the presentation Avatars of Environmental Education. And we'll first start with a question to you. Okay. So first, there'll be a short quiz for all of you, and I'll kind of record your responses. And then I'll be telling you the story of environmental education, how it came to be, why it came to be, what happened in our country, what happened in other countries. And then we'll revisit the quiz that we conducted and have a small reflection around that. And then quickly look at what is the core philosophy of environmental education. What is it that all of us, what is that is common for all of us, and how we are going to take it forward from there. So the first question to all of you is, please, you can unmute yourself and respond. Do you think environmental education is part of science or social studies? Or is it neither, or is it both? Both. Okay. We have two boths, 3, 4, neither. Okay. Okay, both. Science. Okay. Any more responses? Nice. That's an interesting take, that most of you think that it is both. And I also agree with you that it is both. We will revisit this. Next part of the quiz. Look at all these big terms. Being in the field of environmental education, in some way or the other, in some time or the other, we would have all heard of these terms. At least a few of them, if not all of them. So next, I'd like you all to tell me what each of these terms mean to you. It will be great if you can unmute yourselves and speak so that I can type while you're speaking. What comes to mind when you think of education for sustainable development, or environmental science, or environmental studies?
Education, if I say education for sustainable development, it means to create to give the education to the student.
Okay.
To know the resources.
To know resources.
Utilization,
okay.
Proper utilization of resources.
Yeah.
Conservation education is again the existing of the component in the nature, to know the roles and roles of the each creature in nature.
Yes. Thank you so much, Manjeet. Others, you can repeat. If you have something to add, you can add, or other terms anybody wants to participate. Please. This is our discussion, not just my talk. So please make it big for me.
Hi, Archie this side.
Yeah.
Whatever the experience we had and whatever the knowledge we are gaining as an environmental education is what I got the process is like to know about the environment, a person who explore the individually as an environment and nature.
Mm-hmm.
So
Could you repeat that second part again? I missed that. To know about the environment?
Environment, different parts of environment, nature, and whatever the real environment we have, to explore that and find out the knowledge about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Maitri, Anjali has typed in the chat box. Anjali, is this for the first one, for education for sustainable development? She says needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a great addition to ESD. What about these other things? What is EVS? What is environmental science?
Or is there even a difference between environmental science and environmental
science
studies?
And EVS,
right?
Yeah. How about ecology? Has anybody thought about ecology? What does ecology mean?
I'd like to give explanation for natural history and ecology. So natural history is like a description of how living beings are, and ecology is interaction between living beings and the environment.
Thank you, Geeta.
I would add behavior as well to natural history.
Yes, description includes behavior.
Behavior, where they live, how they live, in habitats.
Okay.
I would add one point for ecology. So, like when we are saying interaction between living beings and the environment, that is probably for one ecosystem. But ecology also includes the interactions between various ecosystems. So, how one ecosystem affects the other. So, I would like to add that.
That's a great point. Thank you so much.
Input from Sanya on nature education, if you would like to move on to that. Sanya says nature education is learning about processes that takes place in nature, connecting to nature, understanding interrelations and interdependencies.
Okay, thank you so much, Sanya. We have 3 more empty spaces. Anybody? Ecology includes biodiversity. Yes, definitely. Environmental science. Thank you so much, Anjali. To protect the environment and human health. Okay. Health. Okay. Last, EVS. Any EVS teachers? Oh, thank you, Manjit. Outdoor education, interactive. Mix of most of the words mentioned below. That's it. Okay. Life skills and survival skills. Thanks, Abhisheka. What about EVS? Primary teachers.
That's what we're waiting for you to give us Gyan on, Maitri.
What is this? Okay, strategy to protect the environment. Thanks, Anjali. You have saved all of us, all the EVS teachers here. To know the surroundings. Yes, definitely. Wow, thank you so much. So, all of you know everything. I needn't do today's talk in a way. Anyway, so we all hear about these terms. So many of them seem so similar. So many of them are used in different contexts, misused so much. I'd like to tell you the story of environmental education. If possible, you can keep your videos on. It'll be nice to see you while I talk. Thank you. So environmental education is a new concept. It's a relatively new subject if you think in terms of school subjects. It's only about 50 to 70 years old. Like for example, if you compare it with modern science is about 500 years old. Maths is about more than 2000 years old. And philosophy is way older than even 2000 years. So environmental education is like a newborn baby in many aspects. So when was it born and why was it born? About a little more than 100 years ago, in the late 1800s, people who studied history, natural history and ecology in Western countries started noticing signs that certain plants and animals were disappearing. Well, many animals had disappeared before this as well. Like many of you might have heard about dodo in Mauritius, right? Dodo went extinct long ago, and we all give it as example in the classroom. But this time in the late 1800s, people started getting concerned about these animals disappearing. Why? They noticed that the scale of destruction, the amount of destruction that was happening was not limited to just one species dying out, but whole ecosystems changing along with it. There were pesticides destroying helpful insects and creatures, and industrial pollution leading to mass death of animals in rivers and coasts. And along with these population ecologists, people started identifying and measuring the ways in which pollution changed chemical and physical aspects in soil, air, water, and how that affects the way in which living things are there. So concepts like global warming, ocean acidification, and all started coming. So this was the birth of environmental science, where they studied how pollution and changes in the physical and chemical aspects of the environment affects living beings. Now, in the early 1900s, the World War started happening, and there was more pollution and more destruction, and it was at an unimagined scale, which was very obviously reflecting on the health of people. So this made many countries in the West reconsider the kind of relationship they had with the environment, and they decided that okay, we have to change the way in which we interact with the environment. So in 1970, in the 1970s, there was something called Stockholm Conference, and in the Tbilisi Declaration, which came out after the Stockholm Conference, environmental education was officially born. And the major agenda of this was to help the environment recover, create awareness, and create a population that will take action towards protecting the environment. The focus of environmental education was to take action. There was awareness and there was taking action. Now, the content of this newborn environmental education 50 years ago was heavily based on exploring scientific methods of ecology and environmental science, with a stress on building scientific temper, or they wanted the children to have problem-solving techniques. So natural history, ecology, and environmental science together became the kind of areas of study that powered the environmental education in schools. So one of the key solutions to stop environmental degradation was to create safe spaces that were untouchable by people, like wildlife reserves and national parks. However, this was not simple because both animals and people didn't understand what these boundaries meant. All these boundaries were on maps, there were some fences, but people who were living right next to the forest had always been interacting with the forest, so they didn't understand what these boundaries meant. So human wildlife conflict, elephants invading banana fields, wild boar invading rice fields, human wildlife conflict came to be more studied. And this whole process gave birth to conservation education, that people need to be made aware that animals need to be saved and preserved, and how human animal interactions take place in those areas. So conservation education came about. So this evolved into making people aware of saving animals and plants around them instead of destroying them. So people in conservation education were encouraged to be caretakers and stewards for the endangered population of animals they lived with in order to preserve them. Now, even with all these studies and awareness through education, in the next 30 years, there was even more degradation to the environment. Even with fast advancement in technology and lots of problem solving that was happening, all this large scale degradation was not brought under control. Further, they realized that population explosion, hunger, disease, lack of livelihoods leading to poverty were all issues concerned with saving the environment as well. And many countries decided that a long-term plan, which was holistic and addressed all these issues together, was needed to improve the quality of the environment and the lives of people. So in 2002, which is just 20 years ago, the World Conference on Sustainable Development took place, and the term Education for a Sustainable World or Education for Sustainable Development came to be. So around the same time, I was talking about conservation scientists and conservation education, right? So those people were realizing that this save nature approach is harming the local population of humans dependent on nature for survival. So they too began to look at conservation from an improving the human nature relationship point of view. Now, along with all these environmental aspects, in education itself, there was a lot of growth in psychology. There was a lot of new knowledge in child development studies, which made educationists rethink and understand that interacting with the environment and connecting it with it emotionally is also very important to build a healthy human nature relationship and eventually empower people to take action regarding pollution and environmental degradation. So nature education combined with outdoor education with a stress on simply learning to love the environment was born. So this nature education and love and empathy is a fairly new concept which is not even around 10 years old. Now, the aims of all these various avatars of environmental education, even after all these revolutionary changes, kept changing and they didn't help shape any one solid environmental education curriculum for the whole world. Why? Because there was a huge divide in the needs of so-called countries belonging to global north, that is USA, Europe, Japan, and developed countries, so-called developed countries, and the needs of the people in the global south, like our country, Africa, South American countries, and Southeast Asian countries. The needs of the people in these countries were different, very different. So in the global north, the way in which people lived was very different. They had access to health, education, and safety, and they were nicely established, at least better established than we were. While we were all struggling for surviving. Hunger was a problem, population was a problem, providing healthcare was a problem. So we were struggling to get basic necessities of life while they were talking about how the environment has to be saved. So if we don't get the basic necessities of life, how can we think of saving the environment, right? So how did this affect the environmental education field? So initially, in many ways, we were following what Global North was doing instead of doing what we ourselves needed to do to satisfy our environmental education needs. So information and ideas that flowed from there to here, there was a lot of gap, right? Communication was not so easy 50 years ago. So we were constantly kind of following what they had already left behind. Like, for example, while environmental education was based on environmental science in the 70s, in our country, education policy was still being made. And we were very busy trying to consider how to teach basic maths and languages and sciences. And environmental education was an afterthought in the Kothari Commission. That was a major part of framing our education program. And hence it took the avatar of EVS, which we all teach in schools. So while they in the global north shifted to conservation education and outdoor education and emotional learning, we were still writing our EVS curriculum, keeping in mind environmental sciences. But this formation of education for sustainable development 20 years ago was also done so that the whole world could bridge this gap and address environmental education together. So there were a lot of goals made. If you want, I'll send you the link to that later. And in the last 20 years, communication channels have also improved drastically and made exchange of information and developments and methods of education faster and easier. So even after going through all this, environmental education is still a small child, and we are all its caretakers responsible for its development. So now let us revisit the quiz. Whatever these complicated words are, all of this helped me understand the nature of environmental education and the way in which it has evolved. Interestingly, this history also brings to light that our core intention, all of these terms, actually most of these terms, the core intention of these education efforts is to change human nature relationships in some way. Whatever the Sahasranama of environmental education is, whatever the avatar is, the core philosophy behind all these terms is the same. And that philosophy is to work on relationships we have with nature, to work on human nature relationships, to understand, to reflect upon, and if needed, change the relationship between people and the environment. So to improve our approach to environmental education, maybe we should perhaps first understand this philosophy more than all those terms put together. So many times while teaching environmental education, we end up assuming that all children love nature. Everybody has to love nature, that everyone should love nature, and we are focused on making children learn facts and all the harms caused by humans to the environment, instead of first asking what is the relationship they have with nature. Like Vikeshji pointed out, what does the forest mean to you and me and Chhattisgarh forest? What does the forest mean to Vikeshji living there? What does the forest mean to those people who have started living there after Forest Rights Act came to be? Do we consider all of this when we tell the student save trees, we don't really consider it, right? We think, oh, we love nature, we should protect nature, and we put forth only that. So perhaps we should start considering what is our relationship with nature? What is the student's relationship with nature? Do they love it? Do they hate it? Do they interact with nature at all? Or are they on their phones all the time? And without knowing the starting point of that child, how can we even begin to teach environmental education without making the child understand its starting point, without knowing the prerequisites for environmental education? How can we even start our approach? So one of the basic tenets in education, which all of us as teachers know, is to make the student go from what they already know to what they don't know, teaching them what they don't know. So with this, I leave you with some questions to consider. When you're designing your own approach to environmental education, it might be in your classroom when you're teaching it, it might be to the community on a large scale, or it might be in making policy. Like many of you are involved with SCRT Chhattisgarh, right? Manjit, your team is involved with them. So how are you going to shape that policy based on the way in which humans already have a relationship with nature and how it should look like in the future?
Can I ask one simple question?
Yeah.
See, in general, the attitude of the children towards nature starts with interaction with the environment around them.
Yes.
And it starts with a very small thing. And first problem which comes out is the fear factor.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for bringing this up, sir. Excellent. Okay. Yes.
The fear factor. One thing is that, see, the child is associated with that fear factor for two angles. One is fear from bugs, fear from the snakes, fear from the many of these reptiles and other things.
Yeah.
In general, this is the first part which is being embedded to them.
Yeah.
In fact, it is embedded by the parents, embedded by the teachers also. Yes. At the same time. Yeah. So that is one of the most detrimental phenomena of when we talk about environmental education. Second part, which is related to, this is part the animal part. The second part comes with the flora and that is the plants.
Yeah.
They tear out the flowers from the plant without even understanding what kind of damage it is going to give it to the, and actually taking some of the plants leaf also. And cutting down, trimming a tree. Why it is necessary? It is absolutely unnecessary activity which is being done, and this happens in front of them. So they learn what is being done.
Yeah.
So attitudinal issue of the parents, how can it be taken care of? These are the two fundamental aspects which is highly detrimental to the environmental education. This is my observation.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You have brought one of my favorite topics to the discussion here. So fear. All of us as teachers have seen children be afraid of things. We are also afraid of things. If I see a snake, I will run away. If the snake is near my leg, I will throw a stone at it. I have to protect myself, right? I won't go to pick it up and say, "Ayo, Papa," and give it love. I will, of course, be afraid for my life and run away from it. And tearing, destroying, or in a broad way being damaging to the surroundings around them. So the first thing I'd like to say is that think of yourself when you were a child, all of you. How did we grow up? We did all these things and learned to interact with the environment, right? Yes, I destroyed leaves. Yes, I watered some plants as well. Yes, I plucked flowers for puja. And I did multiple other things. But eventually, I grew to love plants around me. Eventually, it took me 10 to 20 years to build a healthy relationship with my environment. Now, in that stage, telling a child, no, don't do it, or no, you shouldn't be afraid, or no, telling a no in any way is not okay. I would say that it's okay for children to be afraid. It's okay, let them be afraid. The only thing we can do as an environmental education teacher is make them aware that whatever they're afraid of might be afraid of them as well. The snake could be afraid of the child as well. The child is so big and the child can stamp on the snake. We can make the child reflect on what it would be like to live from the snake's point of view, and perhaps leave that small kida in the brain of the child so that they can think and develop their own opinions about it. So while growing, I feel that it would be good to first accept whatever the child's emotion is, whatever the child's actions are. Why is a child tearing leaves? Because that is the way in which the child is making sense of its environment. So recently, Veena and I were discussing, do you know this antlion pits? Can somebody Google it and wait, I'll Google it and show you a photo. ऐसे कितने लोग इसको देखे हैं आपका surroundings में? Anywhere?
Yeah, seen it.
You've seen it? Yeah.
Yeah. Plenty of locations. Yes.
Plenty of locations, right?
Yeah.
So I used to see it as a child in 3rd or 4th standard, sir. And I used to destroy it completely. ऐसा करके बहुत मजा आता था, like पूरा ऐसा करके destroy करना. About 4-5 years later, मैंने notice किया कि कुछ beetles है इसका अंदर, इस pit का अंदर कुछ कीड़ा है. तो जब मैंने उस कीड़ा को notice किया, मैंने सोचा अरे वो कीड़ा उधर है, अगर मैं उसको disturb करूंगी तो कीड़ा मर जाएगा. So मैंने ऐसे ही छोड़ दिया. After about 4 more years, I was still in that environment. I was seeing that, right? I realized that the कीड़ा doesn't live there. Something else lives there, and the कीड़ा falls into that trap, and that something that lives there eats the कीड़ा. So this was my journey of learning what is this antlion nest, and my journey of also understanding the life that is associated with it, and eventually grasping that I shouldn't destroy it. So at that point, you can tell me, Jagpal sir, at that point, if somebody had told me, hey, stop, don't destroy it, I would have stopped looking at it completely, right? I wouldn't have processed it further at all. I wouldn't have
one quick point
further in any way.
I have one quick point to add to yours also, Maitri. And it's a very interesting discussion, right? We all have this issue of how do you deal with something like this. And it's this thing of curiosity also, right? What Maitri also brought up is that she was in some sense destroying the nest because she was also curious about what was happening. And a lot of environmental education, nature education, the emphasis is on curiosity, right? How do you develop that sense of curiosity, wonder, the sense of connect with nature? And many of us argue that until a child or any of us hold on to something, like even if you're pulling a leaf, a child needs to do that. That's in their innate nature to do it, right? To pull a leaf. All of us did that as children. And so if you cut that short, just like what Maitri said, it's very possible that that child will then develop another kind of fear of not touching anything. And hence, we might also they might lose the curiosity bit of exploring more around that. And so there is a fine balance. But I think in the larger scheme of things where whole forests are destroyed and places are destroyed for mining, asking it's okay if a child plucks a leaf, plucks some flowers.
No, the my point of raising that issue was more of a generating a kind of attitude towards that part, because this is more in the sense of urban masses rather than rural masses. Rural mass is more connected with the nature, so they don't have that tendency. The urban mass has grown up seeing that more, rather than it sees more of like cutting down trees. He sees more of like that activity. Whereas
Point taken.
Where the rural mass sees their forefathers planting trees. So that's
your point is taken, Dr. Jagpal.
And they are like they used to have more connectivity with nature. But when it comes to attitudinal changes requirement, see, definitely curiosity, one of the fundamental principle which is needed to be ascertained in the kids. But along with the curiosity, conservation aspects, how do we club that? That is the whole question, is how do we club that conservation aspect with the curiosity aspect? And instead of instigating fear, the conservation attitude should be developed. So that is what the both the sons are like they play with the snakes right from they are 1 year old, because we have not instigated kind of fear in them. Rather, we have thrown snakes on them when they are just 1 year old.
Correct.
But we have faced the problem also. We have faced the problem also at times when happens that he might be able to pick up a poisonous snakes.
Correct. Yeah. So
this is kind of.
Yes. Now I understand your question better now, sir. So I'll give a nice direct analogy for that. Let's think of I'm a child and I have a chocolate in my hand, and chocolate plastic wrapper का अंदर है. अगर मैं बस स्टैंड में हूँ तो मैं चॉकलेट रैपर को निकाल के चॉकलेट खाने के लिए बहुत मन कर रहा है, तो जल्दी चॉकलेट खाना है, चॉकलेट खा के रैपर को वहीं पे फेंक दूंगी, बिकॉज आई डोंट नो द बस स्टैंड. इट इज नॉट माई प्लेस. इट इज अ पब्लिक प्लेस. इट इज आउटसाइड. इट इज देयर. इफ आई एम एट होम, अगर मैं घर में बैठ के उसी चॉकलेट को खा रहे हूँ, इस घर का सफाई में आई एम ऑल्सो पार्ट ऑफ इट. I love my house. I want to keep my house clean. So I will walk to the dustbin and throw it. Or I will keep it here and throw it later. So I would say the answer to your question, to bridge that gap, I think if we help children love nature more, if we introduce city children to the nature around them, there are birds, there are spiders in their homes, to introduce them to nature around them, to make them love it, interact with it more, make them curious about it, this conservation attitude will automatically develop. We need not teach them responsibility. They will take care of it on its own. And they innately have it, right? So many kids bring puppies from the road. We have to rescue this puppy. We have to take care of this bird, right? So
that's a natural tendency in the kids. That's a natural tendency in the kids.
Exactly. So we nurture that love and care, and automatically as they become older, this responsibility will grow, right? Will grow along with it. We can't really teach anybody to be responsible. We can only build a good foundation for them so that they understand responsibility. We can be good examples for them.
So that means what kind of intervention is needed in the educators need? What kind of interventional aspects which are needed by the educators in terms of bringing those kind of attitudinal changes? That is the crux of the process, where in the activity-based education more predominant. It should be more predominant that activity-based environmental education is more important than theoretical knowledge.
Yes, definitely, 100%. Activity-based education will definitely play a big role.
This is just to do with Maitri's previous question on experiences with those words and how they're being represented or misunderstood. No, this common language that you're speaking about. Like, I've often found, especially in like urban classrooms and urban centers, that environmental education and nature tends to be reduced to something very simple and very devoid of its complexity. Like, okay, ban plastic, save water, save trees, let's plant trees. whereas the entire complexity of the problem is a lot of times just missed out. And so just to have that common language, okay, like, you know, like I remember when I was in school 20 years ago, we had these campaigns against plastic, the use of single use, and I find that the same conversations are still active. Like, we've not, in some sense, we've not moved beyond that. So that I found like a huge like environmental education can encompass all of these things. So yeah, I found a lot of problems in communicating what I mean by environmental education as opposed to what someone else means. And there's this other question I had, which may be slightly tangential, but like how do we, like, I've also faced this problem where, like, when I see environmental education as a separate entity, like not connected to everything else that happens in school, then it becomes really challenging, because, for example, what we learn in science or geography at times is in direct conflict with what the EBS curriculum is about. Like in geography, for example, we talk about bauxite mines. Like someone or some BKSG or some Chhattisgarh, and he's talking about the forest in Chhattisgarh. But what we learn in geography is like, okay, mines are found. Chhattisgarh is known. I only knew about Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh about the mines and nothing else. So what we learn in science and like this idea of development and progress is sometimes in direct conflict with the environmental education that, or the EBS curriculum. Then how do we, like, you know, bring some sort of, I don't know, like, yeah, so that, and also what Dr. Jagpal, he was talking about this fear, then like I've also found that like this fear is also product of our times. Like, we're living in gated communities and houses, we are even as fearful of our neighbors and communities. So it's not just fear of nature, but it's fear of everything and everyone. Then how do we, you know, within this context, how do we create this relationship with nature that you're talking about, is something that I found challenging, and I just wanted to share that.
This integrated environmental education in everything under the sun, and environmental education being a separate subject, has been one endless debate. And a lot of like recently there was a ruling that environmental education become a separate subject, but still evaluation is very careless. Nobody gives marks. Arey, project karke khatam karenge, like, you know, all those things happen. So it's not taken very seriously. So is it to be integrated or is it to be separate? It's a whole new discussion which we can probably have in one of the next sessions. Meanwhile, to answer the contradicting thing that science is saying and environmental education is saying, well, that's the contradiction we live with as well, no? We need to sit here on this chair and table. I need to cut a tree, but I also have to save the tree. So this is the kind of paradox we live with, and I feel rather than streamlining it to say the same thing, it would be better to kind of bring into the, say, the bauxite mine geography lesson, when to stop. When will the environment be really harmed? When do we have to stop mining there? If that aspect can be brought in there, and the aspect that we need bauxite mines to live be brought in EVS as well, it could probably be mutually beneficial. What do others think? This is, I'm just thinking off of my mind. This is not like studied or anything. Please give us your opinions. आप क्या सोच रहे हो?
Matri's questions I will answer, because see, what Rahul was also saying that what he has studied in geography is about mines, about when it comes about Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand, right? Fair enough. I mean, generally what happens in the school syllabus, mostly it is more or less when it is geography, world geography, or more or less countries geography.
Yeah.
But local geography is limited.
Correct. Yeah.
In their own curriculum.
Yeah.
So local geography is missing, so the child does not get connected to its own surroundings.
Yeah.
So that's an issue which comes up, because when I say my kids, how many districts are there in Chhattisgarh? So they are clueless, because in their school syllabus, it is a CBSE syllabus. So CBSE doesn't have that the state of Chhattisgarh in the syllabus framework. So what is in Chhattisgarh was never taught either in geography or in social science. What in the both the context. So that connectivity will be missed out in that aspect. So obviously we'll have that dilemma.
Yes.
So in the syllabus, those who are studying in say the board, which is the state board, they might be aware of the local context. Yeah. But those who are into the other boards may not be aware of that. So that's the question. And across the other different states, state-wise information is limited to certain aspects. Yeah. So that is what the answer to Rahul's questions, that okay, this is the issue which comes out when you talk about this way. So the connectivity is missing on that line. So that's another reason. So there is an interconnectivity of environment with the other subjects as well.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great point. Place-based education is something the national curriculum cannot cater to, right? What you were saying, sir, to say that to teach me about what is around me, the national curriculum cannot write that, but my teacher can help with it. That's why we are all here, so that we learn all these different techniques and kind of take it back to the children there, right? That was a really good point.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that not just in EVS, I think in EVS it comes out quite strongly that when we talk about our environment, we talk about it from the point of view of the relationship that we as people only have with it and how we use the environment and how it is useful to us. But it was interesting to see in the example that Rahul gave also that even in subjects like geography and science, that's what is emphasized, right? So it's a very it would have been so wonderful if a geography lesson about the state of Chhattisgarh didn't just talk about bauxite mines, right?
And also how the geography also then kind of determines what kind of other animal and bird life is allowed to thrive because of geography, because of habitats, right? And that's something we never learned. I mean, I learned about that when I studied ecology in my master's, right? So that connect was completely not there, right? Just soil, the fact that you have different types of soil, and therefore we learn about it in terms of, okay, because of this type of soil we can grow cotton, because of this type of soil you grow paddy. But none of the textbooks talk about, because of this kind of soil you have certain kind of plants possibly being able to thrive, and therefore animals are able to live in those areas, or birds come for that, or what soil organisms or fungi is there because of that. And that's, I think it continues to be missing in our narrative. And that's why for me this kind of a discussion is so important, because it allows all of us to also realize that we are all struggling with the same issue, right? And we're trying to see how we can actually try and make a difference in our own small little spaces as much as we can. And the small interventions that we're doing is fine, but to have a larger dialogue as a community and then to make sure we try and make a larger change somewhere down the line is something which will be superb to think of and to aim towards.
All of you covered a lot of things, but I think I want to touch a minor point. Maybe minor, maybe not so minor, but it's from the teaching side of things, and it's related to teacher education. And often what happens when we focus on children and children's with producing material, and we forget that the teacher hasn't had similar exposure or hasn't come from a background necessarily to do certain things in the classroom, and the training process is, of course, what it's like, so I don't even have to say that. But one thing that often when we talk of, say, let's just talk about this nature, and there is a certain purpose that comes. So I want to use the technical term, there's a lot of teleology, that is, there is this outcome is because of this purpose, rather than the outcome is the end of a process, right? Like the classic example is why to take your example that you were just sharing Vena, is that there's a tree and there are fruits, right? And why do birds come there? Now, if you want to ask that question, often when we talk about it, we just say birds come there because they want to eat the fruit. I mean, that's fine, but how did the birds learn that they like the fruit? When did it all start? So then the question becomes, okay, is there always been a design to kind of for the bird to be able to know it beforehand, right from the beginning? Or is it that over a period of time the bird and the fruit relationship has developed and emerged in that manner? So that doesn't, and often a lot of confusion at the not just in the classroom, but about these particular details, but also big picture ideas about what this means. Why are ecosystems that way? And interference, and as far as we are concerned, we have always been part of ecosystems, but we take ourselves out of it and bring in purpose in a different way. Now, these are problematic ways of looking at it at that scale, and then we also have implications at the level of decision making around building a dam and so on. So again, that problematic way of pulling yourself out. So I think that from decision making at the level of to understanding it in the classroom at different levels, I think this is something that I wonder, as teacher educators, as part of teacher education, how do we kind of see the limitations of teleological language, as opposed to just using minor, in some places when interacting with children, it may be okay to use the language, but to make it intentional, as saying that it's actually how it is, there is an intent behind it. That is what I feel. I mean, I'm just wondering, how do we tackle that? I don't know, because it's much deeper. Yeah.
While teaching science, we always say this is the fact, right? Apple falls down because of gravity, pakka 100%. So I think the way in which science training is given in schools, the training is given to teachers, will be detrimental towards addressing the aspect that you have pointed out. So if science is taught in a way in schools that it's tentative, it's not true, it's possible, mostly possible, ho sakta hai, in that language, and it takes years to build it, right? Like I wouldn't get scientific temper in 10th standard. I think I got it when I was 24 years old. Like 24, 25 years old, I was like, oh, scientific temper. So probably even for teachers, good elementary education in their lives in science, and eventually in science pedagogy could address that.
I mean, the reason why is that because a lot of what we've been talking about has an element of investigation, and typically a prominent way of investigating here is the scientific investigation process. I mean, we use history. But if you look at it in all those disciplines as well, some aspects of the how science is done has also kind of become part of those disciplinary approaches as well. Say, for example, what is the nature of evidence? The question of evidence is so important in modern history, as opposed to traditional accounts of how traditional approaches to history, which still are part of cultures across the world. Modern discipline of history places a lot of emphasis on evidence and interpretation based on multiple comparisons of evidence too. Okay, so I'm just giving an example of how some of these thinking approaches are common. So which means that for teachers, and because we all work with teachers or are teachers, what do we bring in kind of helping children to even navigate the world in multiple ways. So I think that part of it is, like you say, we have to understand the history of how environmental education has contributed to this, but it's also history of science. It's science teaching and science education in this country and the rest of the world that is also part of this story.
But
if I can add one point, sorry, Maitri, yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'll just quickly address this science investigation approach. I want to connect it to what Vikesh ji was telling about Forest Rights Act in Chhattisgarh. So all of you, I want you to consider this. Investigation tells us forest is being destroyed. Science is telling us forest is being destroyed. अगर फॉरेस्ट राइट एक्ट्स को निकाल के उन लोगों को उधर से हटा देंगे हम, वो लोग कहाँ जाएंगे? वो लोग का क्या होगा? इसका इन्वेस्टिगेशन कौन कर रहा है? साइंस इसका आंसर नहीं दे रहा है ना. तो साइंस चाहिए, इन्वेस्टिगेशन के लिए साइंस डेफिनेटली चाहिए, साइंटिफिक टेम्पर चाहिए, बट ह्यूमन कंसर्न एंड ह्यूमैनिटीज भी बहुत बहुत जरूरत है. I think the strength of environmentalism and environmental education is that science और humanities को दोनों साथ में देख के, ओके फॉरेस्ट डिस्ट्रॉय हो रहा है, ठीक है, पर इन लोगों को कहीं पे जाने के लिए जगह नहीं है, तो इन दोनों को साथ में जोड़ के कैसे संभाल सकते हैं? This would be environmental education, I would say, more than.
मैं इस पे एक बहुत अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस बता रही हूँ, बहुत शॉर्ट में. मैं विकेश जी भी सुने, 2 कैटेगरी के साथ ट्रेनिंग, नेचर के ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम्स है, आई एम एफिलिएटेड. एक है जो गवर्नमेंट के फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट, और दूसरा है जो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन देखते हैं, और उसी ग्रुप में कम्युनिटी. तो अगर आप पूछेंगे कि कौन ज़्यादा डिस्ट्रॉय करता है, तो फर्स्ट आंसर आता है एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन से कि कम्युनिटी डिस्ट्रॉय करती है. व्हेन यू स्टार्ट डिस्कशन कि चलो कम्युनिटी का क्या है, कितना यूज करती है, और माइनिंग जो हो रही है वो कितना करती है, अर्बनाइजेशन है, तो हम अपना घर बनाते हैं तो हमको कितने लकड़ी की जरूरत होती है, और वो जो गांव में रहने वाला जो है वो कितनी लकड़ी यूज करता है. व्हेन यू स्टार्ट कैलकुलेटिंग दैट, वो जो कंडीशन है वो बहुत शेमफुल हो जाते हैं. यस, तो द वे वी कैन टीच देम कि उन्हीं के लॉजिक में, उन्हीं के साइंस में यू कैन से दैट कि व्हाट हाउ दे आर डिपेंडेंट एंड देयर लाइफ इज, दे नो वेरी वेल द कंजर्वेशन. वो उतना ही लेते हैं जितना उनको चाहिए होता है. बाकी तो जो यहाँ पे है लालच है, वो सब है, वो अर्बनाइजेशन और माइनिंग की तरफ है. तो कैसे साइंस और लॉजिक और सोशलाइजिंग को इंक्लूड करते हुए, just one experience, how we can educate that.
Thank you so much. I think that's a great example you gave, Manjeet ji. Veena, you were saying something. Sorry,
No, that's fine. No, I wanted to add to what Teju and you said, and I'm wondering, because that hasn't come up so far, I think, is the moral positioning which we take when we also come in as science teachers or conservation educators or nature educators, right? We come in with this thing that because we love nature, we want everybody to love nature. And I may be coming from a space which is very safe. I have a roof over my head. I have somebody is giving me a salary every month. I get food automatically from a shop nearby. And so we go into a space expecting everybody to have the same often to have the same lived experience, or to be extremely empathetic, no matter what their position is, what their lived experience is, what access they have to nature, how they've grown up, etc. Right? So I think very often when we think about the kind of nature education work that we do, to keep a little bit of a check on our own moral positioning when we design and think of it to start with. Because and this is something I've learned along the way, right? Even I used to go into spaces saying, how can you not love this spider? How can somebody be scared of a butterfly? I used to find it really strange because I liked it, and I automatically thought everybody should like it, right? And now at least our nature classrooms group, and many of us in these spaces, often we're trying to use this inquiry-based learning method, right, to get children to look at things in a different light, and not automatically going straight to, oh, look at, isn't this butterfly beautiful? Isn't this spider beautiful? But more like, what do you think it's doing, right? And I think Maitri gave one example saying, can we ask a child to become a snake and look at it from a snake's point of view? And so you're empathizing, you're using empathy-based thing through that method. And we're finding that sometimes, very often, this helps, right? So you're not automatically shaming the child or the teacher for being afraid of something, because you have no idea in what circumstance they are coming from and how they have come to that position. So that is one thing I wanted to add. Plus the power structures that we also come with, right? When we go there go to spaces as teachers, how we are viewed by the community or by students, younger children, we do have a more powerful position. So to keep that in mind when we are designing things and we're kind of trying to intervene, and to see if, you know, some of those kind of the positioning that we come with also is something we think of very quite a lot when we go into these spaces. Yeah.
For me as a teacher, one of the first time I was made to reflect on my opinion was when I was doing snake bite awareness in some village. सो मुझे सांप बहुत पसंद है और मैं सांप पकड़ती हूँ और रेस्क्यू करती हूँ. बट जब मैं स्कूल जाती हूँ, बच्चों को वो नहीं बता सकती हूँ कि सांप को प्यार करो, उसको पकड़ो, वो मैं नहीं बता सकती हूँ. सांप से भागो ही बताना है. जितना भी मुझे सांप पसंद है, बच्चों को सिखाना है कि सांप से भाग जाना और दूर रहना, राइट? So it's so difficult for me because मैं सांप को प्यार करती हूँ. मुझे बहुत मुश्किल होता है जब मैं बताती हूँ, और मैं दूर से कैसे सांप को अप्रिशिएट करना वो सिखाना शुरू किया मैंने. Instead of teaching them to love it in my way, I taught them to love it in a more safe way, you know, have a safer relationship with them. So it's very difficult to do that, very difficult to step out of our beliefs and reflect. It's a very good point.